Hello. I hope you're having a beautiful fall day wherever you are. It's finally cooled down here and it is just absolutely lovely. So if you're watching the replay, I will try to skip over all the boring things and just get right to it. And then as you show up, just ask your question and let's talk about it. So it's a very common vibration because it resonates to all club males. And I guess to some extent, it represents club females too, their more immature or impulsive side or their creative aspect. So the Jack of Clubs primarily is creative. How mature is it? That's usually the question we have to deal with when we're interacting with them. So October 11th is the Jack of Clubs, and that's when I'm doing this. And I was like, what should I do a video on, honey? And he goes, oh, I don't know. I'm like, that's what I run into. And he goes, what's today? So that's how this came about. Okay, where's my... Okay. Here it is. So please tell me where you are checking in from. If you are from a hurricane-affected area, we will pray for you. I think many of us have been praying for many of you since it began. We're very deeply connected to you. In fact, I've had an experience or two of feeling connected to them on the astral consciously, which means that a lot of us are doing this work unconsciously to connect, to help, to guide departed souls to the other side, to, who knows, someday we will. Okay, so the Jack of Clubs sits here in the intersection of Uranus and Venus. It's what makes them so very romantic and creative and hybrid. It makes them original in their relating style. It gives them a lot of zest and exuberance in relating to people. And the descending hand, they have to pass through what I call the slough of despair, the mire of a lack of self-confidence. And so this Nine of Diamonds can be, I'm unworthy and I never have enough money. The Seven of Clubs is, I don't know if I have faith that things are going to work out. It is a rod of steel energy in relationship. So they can be stubborn, but they can also be very strong. But it's an obstacles card in the physical. I never have enough money. I run into obstacles all the time. Two of Clubs means they're kind of argumentative. And this just kind of sums up this Jack of Clubs boyfriend I had. There was always a problem. There was always something wrong. There was never enough money. He didn't like his job. He didn't get along with his coworkers. And it was just this tape that played over and over again. I eventually did get really sick of it. So, but they do have to work with this. And I admire anybody who's got all these odd cards that they have to work with because they can be really, really challenging. So then their Jupiter card is the King of Clubs. So when they work through all of that, that's kind of how I see them evolving into their king, into this maturity. And I think for all club people, this is really relevant. It's a basic human thing. Although some people just don't struggle with a sense of a lack of self-confidence, and they wonder how other people that do, why do they? Well, here you go. So let's look at the ascending hand because it is completely different. So their very first card here is the Queen of Spades. So if that's their Mercury card and they're looking to go in an ascending direction, instead of supplanting their own mature feminine side with a mature woman, often of the spade suit, they will become that archetype themselves. And even though I don't like this actor very much, let's see, what's his name? He was in Good Will Hunting. He was the friend. We'll think of it any minute. He was in that movie. Starts with an A, Arco, something like that. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Matt Damon's buddy from Boston. Anyway, His mother passed away when they were young, and he had to take up the job. He did take up the job of kind of becoming a mother to his younger brother. And so that's an example of a Jack of Clubs really stepping into the responsibility. There is no more responsible card than the Queen of Spades. She's got this big perspective. She sits in the pinnacle in the home, in the spiritual spread. So that Queen of Spades has a huge perspective on everything. And that spade says, I'm going to be as mature as I can possibly be. I see a lot. I'm going to take responsibility. So when they step into that energy themselves, there's a whole lot of potential there, and Saturn begins working for them. So their whole ascending line, oh, they also become very generous. This Nine of Diamonds will now sit in their ascending moon, and instead of having thoughts of self-doubt, they're going, the flip side of a nine is unconditionality or infinite energy. So there's this infinite abundance potential for Jack of Clubs, for club males. And then it makes them very generous, very kind, which, you typically, and I know you know this, nobody's one or the other, ascending or descending. You're going to show signs of both. You as a soul have chosen what you're going to work on, so there will be uneven development in this way. So jumping up here into the Saturn line, this becomes their ascending hand. So Mercury, then the Five of Diamonds is Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and then these four cards in the Jupiter line, which is I think represents, huge achievement. So they do have to work through the Saturn stuff, which I think makes them more serious, more willing to look at dysfunctional family issues. There's a readiness there. They've decided to take responsibility for themselves, and so they begin working back through all of this stuff. So the Five of Diamonds in Venus in the positive is I have freedom when it comes to money. I get to travel to make money. There's just a sense of playfulness in terms of desire. So a negative Five of Diamonds energy will be, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I should want. And so there's this incredibly lost energy, particularly for people who are 31 years old, because the Five of Diamonds is the 31st card. So there can be a real lost seeking energy. People who have even cards often have that experience because they want things to be clear and planned out, and this logical mind of the even card. The odd carded hands are pretty comfortable with a five. They need stimulation, adventure, new things. So this Five of Diamonds in ascending Venus, when they're in a really positive way in a relationship, because Venus is friends and women and love, they're going to have a sense of adventure and playfulness, and maybe need some variety. So maybe they don't lock into a relationship quite so quickly. Maybe they, get to know themselves and their desires a little bit more. Anyway, okay, so moving on to Mars. The Seven of Clubs in Mars ascending. Now, this is a card of brilliance and genius. And this represents a sensitivity to energy, a sensitivity to subtlety, it's discernment. It's a very yin, listening, receptive card, which does have the karma of the Eight of Diamonds under it that it has to deal with, which is, do I manipulate so that I can control, or do I manipulate so that I can serve? So my husband was a rafting guide or a fly fishing guide in Montana for 30 years. And when you use the word manipulation, he gets really excited because he's had the experience of, I would call it maneuvering his clients into seeing something or into understanding something. So it's knowing that he had that power, that charm, that ability, but using it with more that King of Clubs energy of, wisdom, bigger picture. So often the more mature Jack of Clubs will go into a profession where a high degree of energetic sensitivity is required. So massage therapy. So this boyfriend I had long ago who was the Jack of Clubs, he literally had magic fingers. And this can be typical of all club males. They can have an incredible intuitive sensitivity in their bodies. And he should have gone into massage therapy. He just had these hot dog fingers and he was so strong and so intuitive. My husband has the same ability, psychic fingers. So anyway, that Seven of Clubs sensitivity energy can also be like a Reiki practitioner, healer of some kind, a counselor, therapist. There's a genius that comes along with that card. So it's going to add an element of genius to whatever they're doing. So my husband is a woodworker and a carpenter, and he can go into any situation and just kind of kinesthetically feel his way. I mean, the more complicated the problem, the older the structure, the more inconsistent the measurements are, the better he is for that job because he's got that intuitive sensitivity. He can figure it out. He's a problem solver. So the Jack of Clubs, club males can become incredibly brilliant problem solvers. Okay, my guides are saying, they're saying bring in the conversation between the cards. Okay, so if you've listened to me, you see that I use this technique. I don't want to say I invented it. It's more like I discovered it, tested it, mystic test, taste. That's how you figure this whole system out. So you look at Mercury, the Nine of Diamonds has a conversation with the Queen of Spades. I've overcome my self-flagellation and my lack of self-worth and my fear of not having enough money, and I've come to a place of empowered responsibility. That's Mercury. Venus, the Seven of Spades, my lack of faith. I have come into the understanding that all is well. I will be provided for. I have faith. I know that the way I'm thinking about this is going to create. So then it leads to the Five of Diamonds. Oh, I have freedom now. So descending Mars, Two of Clubs. When I resolve the argument within myself, when my self-talk, that's how I think of the Two of Clubs. When my self-talk becomes kind and conscious, I become more discerning, Seven of Clubs, about my external world. Well, and about myself too. So yeah, that Two of Clubs can be deeply self-informing. Two of Clubs people can either be in total denial or like navel gazing or incredibly self-aware, very sensitive. Okay, so then descending Jupiter, if I learn how to step into my power as a man, then my ascending Jupiter is the Nine of Hearts. I become unconditionally loving. And so that King of Clubs also represents, okay, so remember how I said they can be rigid with this Seven of Spades, rigid in belief, rigid in ideas, inflexible. The King of Clubs, the mastery of the King of Clubs, my guides gave me this picture and it was just beautiful. It's people sitting around the round table. All these kings of clubs were sitting around the round table, and they were aligned in their hearts and their minds with their higher knowing. That's the sovereignty of knowledge. That's the King of Clubs. I am sovereign in my knowing. But the hearts are connected around the table. There's no hierarchy. It's round. So there's an honoring of everybody's truth. There's an honoring of information. There's a soft energy that's more flexible and open and just accepting. And that Nine of Hearts ascending just puts the cherry on top by saying, it's not about being right. It's about love. It's about deeply loving and surrendering to the value of each person, to the worthiness of each person being loved. And yeah, it's a little too personal to share, but that I have seen that bear out. It took a long time for my club husband to get to that, but that eventually bore out. And that is also my other card. Okay, so ascending Saturn calls us to purpose. It's not just the difficult character development thing. The difficult character development descending for the Jack of Clubs would be the Jack of Diamonds, which is also its karma card, right? Sits under it. So that Jack of Diamonds is the entrepreneur, honoring one's impulses in how to make money. It's creative, and as a diamond, it's going to be a skosh more responsible. more conscientious, more connected to its integrity. So, having achieved that, the ascending Saturn is the Three of Spades, which is interestingly also the karma card to the Jack of Diamonds. How does that happen? I don't know. Art. Arriving at a place of recognizing oneself as an artist. So, the United States as the Jack of Diamonds. What's the soul card influence there? It's ingenuity, it's creativity, it's originality, bringing my unique art into the world, into the workplace, into the marketplace. Creativity is what's at the heart of what makes this economy work, or it should, anyhow. So that Three of Spades being ending Saturn for the Jack of Clubs says, produce that thing. Bring it into the physical. Take all your brilliance, your genius, your head focus, and turn it into carbon. That's what spades represent. Turn it into the physical. That is your calling, that is your purpose, and that is how you will serve others. And whatever that thing is, it doesn't have to be art per se, but it's an actualization of some creative impulse. So let's look at Uranus. Descending Uranus is the Four of Hearts. Am I safe? Have I realized that I'm the one that makes myself safe? It's also commitment in relationship. Have I finally figured out that if I make a commitment, then I will reap the rewards? So is that what is called for here? And then achieving that sense of security, emotional stability. I always emphasize the internal, the selfhood, the core relationship to self here. So this would be, I know what security is and I make myself safe. So if you just joined, tell us where you're from, and tell me if you have this card in your hand, or tell me if you know a Jack of Clubs. And more tertiarily, just know that this applies to all the club males in your life. Okay, so achieving a sense of emotional security will lead to the ascending Uranus card, which is the Three of Clubs, an ability to express oneself. And when I look at the basic immaturity issues of club males in relationship, it definitely is about not knowing how to voice their needs in an articulate, responsible way. To be responsible in relationship says, I know I have to ask for what I need and I have to communicate my emotions. So this Four of Hearts down here, can you communicate about your emotions? It's also mental creativity, the ability to write, compose, speak articulately. And it's also, Uranus represents a kind of genius. So maybe discovering that genius of how to make little children feel secure. That's a good question to ask a club male is, tell me about how you are with children. I think that shows a potential. And if they can win that for themselves and their own inner child, then this Three of Clubs becomes this playground of genius, of coming up with ideas. Okay, Neptune. So descending Neptune is the Four of Diamonds. Am I ever going to have enough? The Four of Hearts, am I enough? Do I have enough money? Do I have a solid foundation? And the kind of lower path that people find with the Four of Diamonds is, I have to work ceaselessly. I have to work 7 days a week. I have to work so hard just to barely survive. California Jack of Clubs. Hey, Vintage Soul. Awesome. So are you male or female? And then we can kind of talk about the difference too. They're very different incarnations of how men and women express that card differently. So this Four of Diamonds, this is very important to them because it's all Neptune cards represent an ideal of some kind. And it's hard for us to imagine sometimes this ideal picture that we're holding. It's hard for us to assume that everyone doesn't feel that way. Like, oh, well, the ultimate would be, for me, it's the King of Diamonds descending. So for me, it's about like really admiring people that run their own business, have a sense of mastery with their business, have a sense of integrity that's so unclad that they don't doubt themselves. The Four of Diamonds is more, I just want enough. I want a strong foundation. I want to feel secure financially, which is a card that's really up for us as the United States this year, by the way. And maybe if we have time, or maybe that's my next video, is to do another reading on the United States, especially since this storm just ripped a gash through our body. So this Four of Diamonds, enough. Oh, your card is displacing the Jack of Clubs this year, Brenda. Remind me of what your card is. Leads to the ascending ideal of Five of Hearts, which is also a karma card to the Four of Diamonds, isn't it? Yeah, the Four of Diamonds sits under the Five of Hearts. Okay, thank you, Vintage Soul. Okay, King of Diamonds. This year you're displacing it. Okay, we can talk about that. So that Five of Hearts, the ideal goes from I just wish I had enough to freedom. I can have whatever I want. Okay, one more card, the Pluto, descending Pluto, partnership. Can you achieve a solid partnership with somebody? Can you be that friend to yourself? This is the card of the ultimately faithful friend who will show up. And its karma card is the King of Clubs. So there's another connection there of another calling to achieve this sense of personal authority within themselves. And then that's real friendship with yourself. There's something very Uranian about this too. I looked deeply into this one time because the Two of Spades is Uranus, friendship with the world, so to speak, friendship with the self. And how does that lead? How does that help us unwind the ascending Pluto, the Queen of Diamonds? That would be about finally having a easier relationship with the diamond females, right? A lot of club female diamond relationships out there, and it's because of this Pluto connection. They activate each other. So if that can become an ascending Pluto card, then that can be a voice that the Jack of Clubs has introjected, and it's a softer, more service-oriented integrity mastery. It's about doing work that is in alignment with your most important value system. Okay, so on to the questions. Okay, so the female Jack of Clubs, I'll address that first. They tend to embody this Queen of Spades here. So the males will look at this, they'll feel this. It's a descending moon, ascending Mercury. They'll either feel this within themselves, or there are club females, Jack of Club females, who will project that onto my mother, and I don't identify with my mother. My mother is really strong, responsible, slave driver. You know, the moon card represents your kind of emotional launch pad, or it could be a mother or a father who just has utmost confidence in you and is also very nurturing. When women are the Jack of Clubs, they tend to embody that energy rather than project it onto another woman. And so that just changes the entire game. They will still pass through this kind of slough of despair, this mire of self-doubt, but they will be more responsible about doing their work. You know what I mean by doing your work, like owning the woundedness and the projections and, where did that come from and how can I own that and see where that came from and heal it. So yeah, that Queen of Spades will totally change the way a female will be the Jack of Clubs. But they'll still be really funny, really lighthearted, very clever. Oh, shit, I had a reading with somebody right now. Okay, I'm going to answer another question and close it out. I got to text her really quick. Let's see. I'll call you in a minute. Closing out video. Okay. So then answering the question, what happens when your card is displacing the Jack of Clubs? So that means that your card is sitting here this year. I would call you to consider the fact that you're actually displacing the Jack of Diamonds this year, because that's who owns the real estate. So the Jack, either Jack, displacing that is going to really challenge you to be very original and creative this year. Just really think outside the box. And Brenda, as a King of Diamonds, and are you Ray's wife? No, I think she's the King of Hearts. No, I can't remember. Tell me. Um, you have all these, you're in the Mars line with all of these even cards. So those even cards make you a very pragmatic, logical person. Well, what's next? The Jack is going to say, hey, what's that creative idea you've had? What does your inner child feel like doing? That's a great source of inspiration. It's also, the question was, displacing the Jack of Clubs this year. Oh, the question to you is, are you Ray's partner? Because I get, sometimes I have that, because you guys watch separately even though you're together. You were raised by a Jack of Diamonds. That's interesting. So this might bring up the issues of, if your mom was a Jack of Diamonds, female Jack of Diamonds are quirky and strange, and they can have difficulty in relationship, difficulty bonding. If they don't aspire to their Queen of Diamonds personality, because that's a shit show. It's the Queen of Diamonds heads up the Saturn line, which means dysfunctional family. So if they can manage to, be mature, be loving, do their work, do the Saturn work that Queen is asking them to do, then they can be really fun. Oh, you're so welcome, Vintage. That's nice to know. So anyway, that displacing these Jacks is really calling you to your creativity and your genius, your originality, not the way things have been done before, but from, a deep inspired, what is your DNA? What's the dance of the particularity of you wanting to do this here? And also listening to those times when you're like, geez, that was really immature of me. That was really irresponsible. Maybe that's going to help you kind of get down to a deeper layer. Like another reader might say, oh, you're probably going to be really immature this year. And you can laugh it off. But I'll say, that's an opportunity to say, who was speaking? Which part of me was speaking? Where was that voice coming from? And does that need some attention and some love? Can I validate that? So anyway, thank you for listening. My next reading, I don't know when it's going to be, but I promise I'm going to be more consistent. It's going to be, we're going to do a reading for the United States because we've moved into our Venus period. Okay, have a great day. Blessings to everyone.